its activities with the other geopolitical actors in the region and with the US. As for the strategy towards civil society and opposition from the inside, I fully subscribe to what Balázs said. You have to critically reduce the number of intermediaries. You do not need to create another Miami for Cuban opposition elsewhere. If you surround Belarusian border with an offices for democracy promotion and put them every second kilometer, that wouldn't help. The projects, the direct aid to internal project, to civil society, to media, to human rights protection, to bigger political projects is a must. This is basically the general line. The awareness of the Belarusian people towards the EU is important, however, that importance needs to be further raised, further promoted, and we should still work quite a lot to create that demand for Europeanization and for normalization.
Thanks very much. Let me move to EUGENIUSZ SMOLAR now. Poland has a special relationship with Belarus, obviously. How do you judge the question of EU policy towards civil society and the regime, but also which conclusions would you draw for the Eastern Partnership of the European Union, and maybe even in a wider sense for the European neighborhood policy in general? We know this is the subject of another session, but we cannot keep it out of the debate on Belarus. EUGENIUSZ.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation and the privilege to participate in this debate. First of all, it is very important to stress that when we say the words like European neighborhood policy or Eastern Partnership, this is the European Union's project. That means you must have a consent and you must have a mandate to run with the project. And the project is being implemented by various actors. It is the Commission who acts within on the 20th of April we are going to have a report on the ENP policies. And in view of what happened in the south, what happened in Maghreb, and in view of what happened in Belarus, the whole strategy of the ENP policy is up for grabs. It's to be reviewed. I mean, the people in Brussels at the moment, when I find myself, thanks to courtesy of your institute, they are working like hell. And they are trying to bring some new and fresh ideas. How can we actually induce change? And this is a very important word in this context, because we have two European neighborhood policies. We have neighborhood policy towards the south, which we debated, which was security and status quo oriented. I called it a crowd control measures, to keep them away. And even the notion which we use, the neighbors of Europe and European neighbors of Europe in the south and European neighbors in the east, that means having some prospect of membership even, or close, very close relationship, shows the difference. And I'm talking about the ENP before I embark on the Eastern Partnership, because Eastern Partnership is part of the ENP machinery. Now, Eastern Partnership, as ENP, is intergovernmental mechanisms. It shows its strength, but it shows its weakness because of that. The strength because it involves the government, and within the context of Eastern Partnership, it involves the governments on the regional scale, trying to bring them into some kind of a regional cooperation, open the borders, talk to each other, implement some projects. It doesn't work very well, but at least they are talking. There are 4 flagship projects. And then there is a new element, which even in the context of the South was ever there but was never implemented. In the Eastern context, it does exist and it does work. It is a civil society role and the new Civil Society Forum Eastern Partnership, which was being agreed upon. And here we have a situation combined with the crisis within the European Union, multi-layer crisis, financial, economic, but also the new External Action Service and all the jazz. That means that there is no dynamics within the European Union to embark on the new project and new approaches. I don't see it. The whole emotion, the whole intellectual capacity will be directed toward the south at the moment and not toward the east. And some people in Brussels, quite openly, they say, well, we can perfectly understand you don't like Lukashenko, but we have many more bastards in the region. We have, what about Azerbaijan? And there is a double standard. Why do you single out Lukashenko when in Azerbaijan things are happening almost as bad, not to mention Turkmenistan and other countries? So when we talk about the new approach to Eastern Partnership, we have to all the time to keep in mind that this is part of the broader picture, political picture of the European Union, and the problems it itself, and that if Poland and Slovakia, Czech Republic, Visegrad 4, our Baltic states, Sweden, Finland. We are the stakeholders in Eastern policy, and if we are to be effective, we have to bring other members of the European Union along. This is very, very important. Now, so I asked myself whether there could be some new approaches, and I think that there are people who are actually putting on the table new, fresh ideas. First of all, it is an old idea which came back. This is we need to have our own national endowment for democracy. This is the best American invention, going strong. We need our own foundation for democracy, for freedom and democracy. It was suggested 8 years ago in the European Parliament. It was killed off because some old member state didn't want it to hear about it. We need to come back to it. Radek Sikorski have proposed it during the conference lately. We have an international Visegrad Fund, which is working very well. We need less democracy. We need less project-oriented approach, more approach towards a real effectiveness. You know, there is too much bureaucracy involved. And people are working from project to project. That means they are doing things which they don't want to do, but they are doing it for money. The other aspect, which is very controversial, and I don't know how it's going to be received by our Belarusian friends, is the fact that we have created, especially in political sphere, not civil society as NGOs, but the political parties in Belarus are not helping. I know it's going to be controversial, but I am deeply persuaded that the fact that the political parties get money from the West, from their political brothers, center, right, left, everybody have got their pet projects, makes them strong because of the international support, but it doesn't make them strong from the point of view of the support of the population in Belarus. And I wonder, I don't think that we could have another one candidate for presidency, but why didn't we have 2 or 3 and not 9, for example? Why? Because those guys are feeling safe. They don't have to fight for support among Belarusian populations. They've got the money from the West. They feel they travel. They've been traveling for years. I know it's controversial, but I think it's part of a bit of a problem, clientelism, political clientelism. So when we are talking about the new, fresh ideas, about the new policies, I think we should understand that this is not the best of times. And what BALÁZS have suggested, to keep pressure, but at the same time open some lines of communication at the lower level of the apparatus, is the key. But it's not, and there is another aspect which I hope we will return. It is a security aspect of Belarus. Belarus is a security challenge, not just to the neighboring countries for various reasons, but also to NATO, which I can come back later to.
Well, thank you. I think you've managed to wake us up here. Eugeniusz, just one brief remark on the national endowment, the European endowment for democracy that you proposed. Well, you know, there are indeed some old member states which are very proud of their own little endowments and Stiftungen, and I could imagine that some of the hesitation to create another European level institution of considerable volume comes from those member states. But that's just my suspicion. Now, before I turn to PAVOL DEMEŠ, let me ask the other panelists to just give me a little sign if you want to react to something here. Yes, I've got one already. So, you know, we have widened the picture eastward. We have Eugeniusz has widened it southward a little bit as well. Let's broaden the picture westward here and talk about transatlantic cooperation in terms of Belarus, but also in terms of the wider Eastern policy. Pavel.
Thanks very much. With pleasure, but I can tell you that this time I was always a little critical until events of 19th of December that Europe and US were sort of disconnected. Americans, tough Europeans, starting negotiating with Lukashenko, all this idea of let's talk to him, he will change, he will be more civilized. I think events of 19th of December put us again on the same page. And I was among those, and there are several others in the room. I was there on the 19th, and I saw brutality together with Irina Krasovskaya, Vlad Pavol, Sergei Kalyakin, MILINKEVICH, our Slovak diplomats, Lubo Rehák, Slovak ambassador, Marian Servatka, and so on. So we saw on our eyes what happened on, and I must say that anybody, my colleague Jörg Forbrick, all of us who were there have sort of slightly different and more urgent feeling that what we need to do with the country, and surely political prisoners were among key factors which united United States and EU. I never seen in last 20 years so quick and unambiguous reaction on both Europeans and Americans on issues from Central and Eastern Europe. And I think that if you saw that it was at Christmas time, both Europeans and Americans reacted very quickly on governmental, non-governmental level. So from my point of view, this was exemplarily good. What we expected more, what was already mentioned, we thought that there will be stricter and tougher sanctions because Lukashenko and 157 people from his country who were part of this brutality were banned to travel to European Union. We have Belarusians here, but none of these guys could come. And I wonder if we would have foreign minister or his deputy here in the room, how he would feel after listening to torture in prisons and all of these brutalities at doorstep of the EU. I think that Lukashenko just showed us that if he cannot travel to Alps in Austria or Slovenia, he was king in Sochi while we were philosophizing what to do and whether we are strong enough or not. Russia gave him simply oxygen, signed treaty on common economic space, and allows him to ski with his illegitimate son Kolya and having good time. So I think that Lukashenko so far is much better than us in achieving his goals. And since we are talking how transatlantic community needs to go ahead and achieve its goal, meaning releasing political prisoners and opening up the country, I think that there are three issues which transatlantic community need to take into consideration seriously. One is to look at OSCE. Is OSCE a serious organization or joke? Is UN with its Human Rights Security Council a serious organization or joke? And number three, we need to do with two countries, which I think would help us if we are serious and strong. One is very big and one is very small. Very big one is Russia. If we are serious about reset of relationship with Russia, Russians cannot pull our leg and talk about that they want to be like us. If they want to be like us, already they need to help us now. And Russians so far are taking about 2 prisoners which are in prison, but they are Russians. Russian citizens, they are appalled that they are kept in prison, but they are not commenting enough. What about those other prisoners who are tortured, who are not of Russian national? And second, very small country, Vatican. May 1st, there will be beatification of Pope John Paul II. The gentleman from Poland, who helped us to release, not to release one prisoner, but to finish communist regime. And I think that Pope Benedict has unique opportunity, since he received Lukashenko with his illegitimate son Kolya 2 years ago, and we do not understand fully why his ambassador Nuncius immediately congratulated and was not protesting. I think May 1st, we should demand on Vatican that Pope Benedict should do something serious and talk to guy whom he received and help us to release political prisoners. And I think that in a nutshell and in conclusion, we need to ask ourselves one question. Are we about regime change in Belarus or not? Because what's going on in Arab world now? How many people dead you need to let leader to be illegitimate and telling him that you are finished? How many more casualties we need in Belarus to say that we are not about imaginary process of democratization in this country, but giving single condition or several conditions to Lukashenko, and if he's not fulfilling them, we should just work on regime change strategy like we did with Milosevic and like we are doing with Gaddafi and any other people. I think that unless we will be tougher, transatlantic cooperation, most powerful union of the world, European Union, most powerful country in the world, United States, need to show that we have power.
Thank you for using the word regime change, which is a word you still don't hear very much in Brussels, although a little bit more often than than 5 years ago. But Balázs wanted to comment upon this. I've got one from the audience. At Lucas, yes. All right, we're getting to this. I'm moving from left to right, seen from myself. But Balázs has the floor first.
Thank you. Now, I'm very glad Pavel raised regime change because this is a fact what we should talk about, really. But also we should talk about, we have a great experience of regime changing from Ukraine. What really the Orange Revolution brought us. That was really the revolution which was really real, was bringing us regime change or not. And I would say it's not. And the reason and these lessons learned, I think, need to taking into the regime change effort in Belarus. And I think when I'm talking about regime change, I'm talking about social and political change. We focus too much on Lukashenko and much less on the society. Again, my first point was we don't really know Belarus. And, social and political change is Poland. Regime change is Ukraine. And what we want in Belarus, Poland or Ukraine? It's a rhetorical question. The other point was the party assistant, which I wanted to react, and I think it's again a great point. And I fully agree with how Gienek was putting it, that unfortunately, donors are making political parties and candidates dependent on investment money. On the other side, look at what happened in these elections, Gienek. Donors pick up the candidates because a few of them had tons of money and others had not. Why? Based on what criteria? Compared to the 5 years ago when actually there was a process run by Belarusians and they elected a single candidate. I think it's a huge difference, and I think the 2006 process was real and it was local. And this process was actually totally donor-driven, and therefore, perhaps we had an issue what we had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ed Lucas, you're the first to take the floor. I understand there is a microphone coming.
And he's on the left.
Thanks for this. I wanted to give two ideas, one of a bigger stick, the other of a bigger carrot. It seems to be the really weak point of the regime is its financial connections with the West. Is this working? Hello?
Is that better? Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the really weak point in the regime is its financial connections with the West. We can have travel bans, and that's good, and we can make lists of people responsible for the crackdown and atrocities and so on. But the really weak point for Lukashenko and his immediate family is their Western bank accounts. And if we can do this for Gaddafi and his family, why can't we do it for Lukashenko and his family and really scare them? We all know the banks who are based in Minsk and the countries they come from in the EU. And it was very interesting when this was discussed in the EU after the crackdown, which countries were very keen to object to any idea of going after this money. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is we need to do something big and dramatic to show that Europe is open for Belarus as a country, even if not for the regime. And I would suggest that greatly expanding the Erasmus Mundus program and taking in not hundreds but many thousands of students from Belarus and the other Eastern Partnership countries would be a very good signal. It would be a pinprick compared with the amount of money we've wasted on things that don't work, and would have a very big effect. And I would add to that we should do it on a Fulbright principle, that the scholarship is conditional on the people returning to Belarus afterwards and working there for a period of years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there were more questions in this direction. Who's next? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Statement is fine. And please state briefly who you are. Not everyone knows you here.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is ALEXEI. I'm a chairman of Belarusian Popular Front Party from Belarus. So I would like to say that we have to divide the issue. Short-term goals and long-term goals. Short-term goals is have political prisoners out of the prison. And at this issue, pressure on Lukashenko regime can be helpful. So that must be pressure put it onto Lukashenko regime, political prisoners to be released. Second long-term issue is democratization of Belarus and regime change. And on that issue, such pressure will not be so effective because changes will not come from inside of the regime, changes will not come from outside the Belarus, changes can come only from